Let's start from that side to here. Short introduction, who are you? What's your relation to Web3 and privacy specifically, please? Thank you.
Is this on? Yes? Yeah. Hello, I'm Polymutex. I work on WalletBeats, which I'm repping the nice shirt of. We're trying to basically be a version of L2Beat, but for wallets, to create incentives for wallets to compete on things that market incentives alone don't converge on, of which privacy is a very important one. And so we look at the various aspects of wallet privacy around do they have private token transfers? Do they keep the link between your public address and your personal information private? Those types of things. And I'm happy to talk your ear off about wallet privacy in general.
Amazing. Hey guys, I'm Kimo. I'm from Finland originally, but I've been traveling a lot like all the crypto nomads. So I'm from Mask Network. I'm originally co-founder of orb.club. It's like a Web3 social mobile app. And I'm I sold that company like a year plus ago, and now I'm like still heading that as a head of product, and I'm also heading like the Lens protocol, which is the decentralized like social media protocol, which we like truly try to make the future of like Ethereum social. And yeah, being like invested heavily in both in building like something like user facing, but at the same time thinking about like how the infra works, and privacy is a big part of it. Like Satoshi started Bitcoin, and like he's a private person, but still has a like an online like a persona. So I think like social like needs to like crypto is built for social, but social is not yet built for crypto. And like how can we like build this like world in to a better place? So that's kind of like where I'm at. So.
Hi everyone, my name is Marina and I'm leading the European Ethereum Institute. We are a policy organization, advocacy organization based in Brussels. We do work in the EU and the UK. There's a lot of advocacy that is happening on the level of different regulations and laws when it comes to crypto in general, but privacy as well. There's quite few, I think, interesting things coming from both of the jurisdictions that you heard about related to privacy, and that's also part of our job to basically communicate to the regulators what are the things that the industry, but also in general, I would say, privacy advocates care about, and basically create dialogue directly with regulators.
I'm Daniel. I work on the Radical protocol. Radical is a sovereign code forge, and we put a lot of attention into making it suitable for people who are seeking privacy. And so this is something that is quite core to the protocol. And beyond that, I also work on the IPFS project and previously worked on Aragon and some other stuff in this space.
Oh, hey everyone, I'm Max. So I work for NIM. We're a company that is building a mixnet. We have a mixnet. I specifically work on our SDKs, so those are all very new, but the aim is to make it as seamless as possible for developers to not have to think about how a mixnet works and just kind of use everything as they would normally. Otherwise, the company, we also like have a product, NimVPN, so we kind of have a decentralized VPN and a mixnet. And yeah, it's really kind of all focusing on protecting the network layer and kind of supporting basically every other app and every other project that's on this panel. So yeah, that's me. Oh, you already have one.
Yeah, I already have one. Yeah, so my name is Eva. My main focus is DeFi, especially DeFi systemic risks, and I have spent last like half a year building something similar to L2Beat, but for the DeFi risks. So I know a lot about various like data pipelines and AI pipelines, and that's why I was asked to work with Privacy Now for the Explorer to some dashboard and pipelines for privacy project data updated. So we want to have like big repository of all privacy projects with up-to-date data, how private they are, work on methodology and stuff. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Connor, and I'm a developer contributing to Zcash, currently working on the Tachyon shielded protocol and the Ragu proof system, which are intended to make Zcash's shielded pool scalable enough for the entire world to use.
Awesome. Yep. Yes, thank you. Thank you all for the introductions, of course. So if you read the description for this panel, it says that it's semi-structured. And as I'm replacing the moderator, for now, it's definitely going to be semi. I'm curious, as we got people here from all, let's say, aspects within blockchain industry, be it communication, payments, identity, etc. Just to start it off with, in general, what would you see in terms of narrative changing the biggest wins recently? Where are we heading in the direction of hope, and where are we heading in the direction of cope, as it is translated in the description of the talk? Who dares to throw the first stone?
Okay, I mean, someone has to. Right, in terms of the directions of hope, then kind of across the stack, right? I'm not talking purely at the network level, even though that's like kind of what I mostly focus on, but like across the stack, then we are actually getting to a stage where there is a bunch of stuff that either exists already in the form of like modular SDKs. You know, we have people who are working on like decentralized storage infrastructure. We have people who are working, you know, kind of at every level there is stuff that's there, right? And it's kind of getting to a point where you feel like it's just kind of plugging it all together, right? I think you can tell in terms of the way that the wind is shifting, how much everyone's kind of, the narrative is turning slightly away from privacy as like an anti-surveillance thing and more into a censorship-resistant thing, where, you know, I mean, the kind of, the direction of kind of attack or like negativity is gone from passive to, okay, how do we actually make stuff that's like robust when someone tries to shut it down, rather than when it's being passively kind of surveilled. I think that's an interesting like sea change that I've seen in the last year or so.
Also, we'd like this to be an interactive panel, so if you wholeheartedly disagree with someone, please raise your hand.
Like from my side, like first with the cope. So I actually have like a Microsoft cap like in my bag. So like blockchain is like really like are we like really gonna scale? Like I think that's kind of like what's been like really like for me to cope. Like are we just gonna be like a Linux or a Microsoft or something that is like not really innovative, right? Not really like we have crazy ideas, like a lot of things, but like how do we get like scale? Like how do we get like real users to use them? And like me building social like now like 5 years, like it's not enough to build a decentralized Twitter, or really or build anything like just for the sake of decentralization or sake of privacy. Like we have to think about like what is the actual innovation, and like what does that innovation enable us. And we have a lot of like a crazy amount of like innovation being done, and I think now the hope where I'm like really excited about is that like we have the technology and we have the like with AI also, like it's never been easier, you know, like this easy to build something for the user, and like how that looks like in the next 5 years is, I think, what's like really excites me is that like now like from like building from idea to a product has never been this easy, and we have a lot of technology coming here, so I'm like really excited about this.
Did you just use Microsoft as an example of a failed company with no users?
I meant more like are you are you using Microsoft as your computer, as your laptop?
I personally am not, and
yeah.
you know,
that's the analogy. So it's more like Microsoft hasn't failed, but it has more like become. I think the win there is like the institution, like it's only used by the institutions, like not as like a users. And now crypto is again like going to this like a path towards institutions. Like a lot of talk about like how do we legalize things in crypto, and I think like we are like this place is like a neo cypherpunk. So how does like institutions, like for me, like, or big companies, like that's not the way where I want to go personally.
How do we bridge the gap between neo cypherpunk individual contributions and institutional adoption?
That is like for me a big question. I think the way we do it is like really like try to like really think about like how the world looks like in 5 years. Like where do you want to live, and like how do you like like in the future. And I think the cope has been in the past. Like we have like so much bad history, like with the politics, everything is just like bad. Europe sucks. Like European, as a European, I can say that. Like we are coping as a Europe. We are coping like I don't know, like how do we scale? Like we don't have any like AI companies. Like how do we like become like big? But I think with like by struggling, like we also find like new ideas for how we like go forward. So I'm like really bullish on like what is gonna happen in the next few years.
Kim was bullish. You too, Marina?
So yeah, like on the struggling part. So what's happening maybe on a more geopolitical point of view, and how it is reflecting in the work we're doing, and how it does reflect in the technical reality as well that we're using today. So we do know what happened a year ago, who was elected in the US. At that time, well, maybe less people know we also had a new commission in the EU, and so the European Union has had a reactive policy to what's happening in the US. And you have mostly also heard, we're talking about Microsoft, some of the basically, I don't know, governmental institutions, they're not using Microsoft anymore. They might not be using so-called American software anymore. So one way how Europe is reacting to that is we are going to use our own self-sovereign tech. If we don't have it, we should build it somehow. There's like legal proposals, laws, etc. around that. They will go into procurement as well. So they will be very practical and very concrete. And then, you know, we can have a discussion if that is possible, if that is feasible, if this is something that we want, but it is happening, so that's a fact. One part of like our advocacy is going into the direction of maybe having a European company is not enough. We also need to look into how this tech is designed, what is the design features, what are we deciding about, you know, all these things that we care about, sovereignty, privacy, etc. It's like not only European is the best or will kind of save the situation that we're in. And then besides that, besides like the software that we're using every day on a computer when it comes to payments and privacy on payments, there has been, I would say, just like a lot of things that we might not have been used to in the past of like political interference with groups and also individuals when it comes to payments and their own ability to use the payments, like the I would say Web2 payment system, that, you know, again, it was and it is unprecedented. So what are we doing in the times where the geopolitical system is changing? How do we react as like, you know, lawyers, advocacy people? How do you react as a builder? What can we do as a community? And I think we all have different roles in these systems. Like everyone is contributing in different ways, and there's like not one right way to do it. And I think like kind of bringing everyone together and understanding that we're kind of building in the same goal, but maybe we are, you know, dressed in a different way. We are in different rooms. We're talking to different people. But at the same time, the goal is important. Like looking back into how are humans being treated within the society, like how are our rights that were by default there before we had tech, before we had digitalization. Privacy was just like a given. And right now with like every new technology, AI, whatever we're using, whatever we're seeing it's happening, the surveillance is just getting by default there and stronger. And then of course the connection to certain companies, to governmental officials and governments. So I think like this, you know, discussion and also the event is really giving us an opportunity to stop a little bit and see what's happening. But from our side, when we really follow the advocacy part, the last year has been really different from what we have done in the past, and we're working on this topic for the last 7 years. So we really see the difference, and it's the right time to talk about it and act.
We had a question from the audience, but first I want Connor to have the opportunity to respond, because you have been waiting for a while, I thought the impression. Okay, then we go here. Yeah.
You mentioned that we need to create European companies that actually have the tools to decide how they end up used. But isn't the problem really that most successful companies, tech companies, usually end up in the States because of, well, market structure, capital structure, because the money is there?
Yeah, I'm not proposing that. European Union is proposing that, and then we can have different opinions around this. But I'm just wanting to say that this is like one of the ways of how one of the strongest jurisdictions in the world is reacting to what's happening currently in the world. And so going back into protectionism and seeing, okay, can we succeed or not? Definitely, we see that, like as you mentioned, AI and other companies, they're going to the US, seeing more opportunities there. But that is again the way of how the EU is thinking about reacting to the what we have beyond the kind of infrastructure that they're talking about, the 28th regime and some other initiatives that are more around entrepreneurship.
So my question would then be to steer it back to our niche here. Is it up to Web3 to solve this? And please pass the mic around. Yeah.
So I'll pull back a little bit. I think we're living through one of the most fundamental revolutions right now with software development, with what we're seeing with AI. And I think as a software developer myself, I think there's a lot of cope because, we spent so many years having this asymmetric power as developers, and suddenly we're seeing that being taken away from us, or at least being commoditized. And I always think about AI as some kind of like a contrasting technology, or as being in dichotomy to cryptography, because it has a natural tendency to centralize, and it requires a lot of resources in order to really deploy at scale. And so you need capital markets, and you need a complex supply chain that involves the whole planet, starting from the minerals that are needed in order to produce the machines that are then, getting imported into Taiwan, and, that's the only place where they're really producing these chips. So I think that's like the AI side of it. And then on the crypto side, you just have developers like a lot of the people who are at this conference today who just have this asymmetric capability and understanding that, the right technology in the right moment can really, I mean purely software really, can have an asymmetric effect, and in terms of like increasing user agency by elevating privacy, and that is sort of the foundation for a lot of other aspects. Given that you have this natural tension between AI and crypto, I think it's also worth recognizing that we just lived through this crazy golden rush of crypto, and what tends to follow Cambrian explosions, if you like, is mass extinctions. And I think what we're seeing is exactly that right now in crypto. So we're seeing a lot of the, like 5 years ago would have been, if I had been on a panel, I would have been saying like, we really need to solve scalability. And I wouldn't have been the wisest person in the room saying that. There was a general consensus that we need to solve scalability, and we magically solved it. It's kind of like we should also pat ourselves in the back sometimes. But now we have this situation, at least in the Ethereum ecosystem, where it's just like, you have all of these L2s, but do you really need them? Especially when the gas prices on the base layer are so low, you don't really have this scalability problem anymore. And one just final thought on this, because I think this is something that brings me a lot of hope. We're living through this age where like everything can be faked now by AI. And it's true. AI is kind of astonishing almost to see the artifacts that it produces. Just take the example of the Will Smith video eating pasta, and just seeing how that has progressed over the last 5 years. So AI can fake a lot of things. Cryptography is not one of them, and I think that's something that plays in our favor. So that's where I see the hope.
It's kind of funny to think about how the Anthropic Series B was funded by FTX, who stole that money from crypto traders. So maybe they're more intertwined than we think. Also, at my team, we use AI to assist our development of new cryptography. It's not quite smart enough to just be like, improve the proof system and then have it figure out new mathematics. But if we know a sort of direction to push it in, it can like help us with research, and it can even help us code it and build it out. And we've been able to iterate a lot faster because of it. Also, you all probably read about how it like AI was used in the recent like security incident and the response as well. So it's like they are intertwined in that way. And then also, it makes me think about how like a data center cannot exist without permission of a state, because like you have to get a bunch of property and fill it with this hardware and drive trucks and pump electricity to it. But a blockchain can and does. And people run nodes in places where you're not supposed to run nodes, and access VPNs in places where you're not supposed to use VPNs. So the relationships to power is very different in the two tech movements.
Yeah, I wanted to add on that. So, like for me, last couple of weeks was about finding hope in crypto again. And a lot of my friends, like the smartest people I know, left the crypto with the words like, okay, we have built all we needed to be built, like infra, DeFi, and just went work for deep tech, for AI startups. And I kinda agree with them, because we already have like fast Ethereum, like L2s, we have a lot of DeFi, institutional here, we're deploying money, capital here. But when, like, the second part of the equation, internet itself have been built for already like 20 years, and people in the valley were still nailing out the details. So for now, I think it's a stage where we will need to nail out a lot of details. And with AI agents, we could do it like quicker, with smaller teams, less capital. And the question for me is, who are whose people who will nail the details? For example, if it will be like Solana guys who are about like, you know, digging stuff, fun? Is it like base chain guys who are about like distribution, mass adoption? Or is it will be like cyberpunk guys? So for me, this is important, and I don't have an answer yet. I honestly hope like for cyberpunk guys, but I know them, they won't, they will just go and play with hardware. So we need to somehow get people in, teach them our values without like doing it ourselves. It's very complicated.
What do you think is missing?
Yeah. Why not? Why wouldn't we do it ourselves?
I mean, because maybe we become lazy in a way. I mean, a lot of people were here like for a lot like high volatility. We are not in the period of high volatility anymore. A lot of people have become rich, have successful companies. They're just enjoying their life. And smart builders, they already solved a lot of problems. And they go into like ZK, cryptography, or just living. So we need another challenge. But now the challenge is like less technological and more human, political related. And developers are not very good at human communication, like generally speaking.
Okay, there was a question from the audience.
Yeah, I basically have just been following the space for quite a while, and I feel like we're heading into a future where, you know, you have the ones that own their keys and the ones who do not, and I feel like one side are sovereign individualists and the other sides are basically social contractarians. So the dystopian future would be like China's social credits, and I also feel that U.S. corporations are lobbying government, I feel, in Europe. That's how I sense it. I don't know if it's really true, but it feels like data privacy laws are sort of spreading in sovereign nations, such as places in Europe that are not a part of the European Union. That's where I came from today. And I wanted to like ask a question to all you guys, because I feel we, like with AI and with decentralized physical infrastructure networks, we could have a future where our inference, basically the sovereign individualists, could be with us, because I feel like the people who are actually social contractarians, they might fall into the trap of being digested by, you know, in terms of evolutionary biology, being digested by corporations and have entertainment for the rest of their lives, while the mavericks, which are the other one, the other movement, which is here, I guess, could experience a future where we have inference, such as through DePINs that are mainly maybe Tau or other projects like that. So I wanted to know your opinions on storage, on infrastructure, and these kinds of things.
Yeah, so like building like a decentralized social, like the biggest hurdle is like where do you store that data? Like you cannot store that on chain even today because like you cannot like store like a video on chain. It's like too big. So like there are like providers like IPFS. Like we have our like own wrapper like called Grove that is also built on IPFS, but it has like some permission control or access control there. But in general, like I believe that like the future will be kind of like the future, like for like speaking only about like how does the social aspect look like for now. Like I see that like people like we are able to kind of like build something that is like decentralized, but at the end of the day, it's like a completely finalized on chain. So like all these like node provide like people like running their own nodes. I think we will see that much more. Like maybe like you can have your own like a Claude or like a GPT running your own like node and like store your own data. You can serve that data however you want or choose who you want to serve that. Maybe like with privacy, you can choose who can actually see what part of that data. So
yeah, I have a quick thought on that because that's actually exactly where I was going to go, which is I think it ultimately comes down to the question of can you run this locally? If you can run this locally at home and you don't need anyone's permission to run it, then we're in a great place. But it seems like the hardware is still a couple of years out for that to be something that anyone can just buy the same way that you can probably afford a laptop. When we get there, and if we get there, and if like the geopolitics of the world don't disrupt that progress from happening, I think that would be a great achievement. But having said all of that, my wife doesn't care. She's a social, what was the term that you used? Yeah, she doesn't mind giving all of her data to OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, you name it. She's happy just using technology without really thinking about, and she was here this morning, and I can rant to her all day long about, the cypherpunk manifesto and the importance of cryptography, and it just like flies right over her.
Sorry, I have some perspective on this. I'm not sure if people have seen the fabled and famous recent restrictions on non-US nationals. To me, this is like the starting shot for KYC for large language models that I see kind of as inevitably coming. I think crypto's responsibility in this is to be the decentralizing force towards all of this. And to me, that is one opportunity for having all this all the way, make its way all the way down to users. There are some like stepping stones before the run your own hardware type of route, which are like the Venice type of service of the world. It's not perfect, but at least there's no KYC. You can do payments on chain, this sort of thing. From the wallet perspective, there's the integration piece. Like we've thought a lot about wallets as like the user doing payments for their own needs, but you can also think of wallets generally as clients towards on-chain services. And so something like an LLM wallet-ish, which basically brings you all of the self-sovereignty aspect of being able to use services like this. And the wallet is just a way to do this in a way that's fully self-custodial. That is a powerful thing, and I think that is where crypto has a responsibility to operate. And I would like to see that. This is a bit beyond like the privacy angle. The privacy angle is more about avoiding KYC. In the meantime, all we can do is shout for people to run their models. I run Qwen 3.6 at home. Not everyone can afford to, unfortunately, but there are a lot of startups in China and across the world to create on-demand models, and the more people do it and the more people help others run it, the better we are.
Yeah, I love the part about social contractors and the Mavericks. Like, there's a whole spectrum of people within this two parts. And so when it comes to, let's say, law or tech, where there's, you mentioned the Dimitos access, one other thing is like the legal part. So if something gets prohibited or illegal, there's going to be many more social contractors than Mavericks in this specific point. There are some things that we have regulated in crypto already, and so there's like a decision in which direction you go. There are some things that have not been regulated. Maybe they shouldn't, but there is a discussion of, they might be. Like, I don't know, DeFi is opening up in European Union right now. Should we do that? It can go very deep into a lot of like deeper technical stuff and deeper layers. It can go into maybe smart contracts. So all the stuff that we're discussing here, like if the regulation goes too far, it might bring many more like social contractors and not really mavericks into the domain of the tech that we're building today. So in a way, like both exists, but I think like the legal part is important here. And then, you kind of decide on your own. Do you want to be like part of the thing that is like kind of compliant, but then still you don't want to go into something that is not necessary, and you don't, log into TikTok or something. But like, and those are just like one of the things that are worth mentioning.
I think in the same way that there is a gradient between those two things in terms of like the legal enforcement, how you engage with them as apps as well, then I think as from the builder's perspective, right, I think until relatively recently, we've always been talking about kind of privacy in like a very big but like amorphous way, right? Whereas actually this conversation and like the instance of like, right, are you actually being censored from accessing a cloud LLM backend, right? As like an example of this, shows us that actually when we're moving forward in like developing these solutions, you have to actually at this point now think in a very concrete way of what are you actually trying to make private and why? Are you coming from the perspective as a builder of like, I want to avoid essentially kind of censorship. I'm not able to reach this backend, do this thing because of whatever illegal situation where I am in the world, whatever like that. Or, what am I trying to not reveal? And you have to think about, I think now we have to think about that in like super concrete terms, as opposed to just being like, we need private everything. Because especially when there is this tendency for more and more stuff to be going more and more cloud-based as well, there is a fundamental kind of tension between remaining kind of private or like not leaking whatever on the network level and the amount of data that you're actually moving around, right? We're moving towards this assumption of the internet as being ever faster and like ever more kind of infinite bandwidth models, right? Which are kind of at odds with privacy infrastructure. So we have to think very tactically about how it is we're actually trying to build the thing to do it rather than just kind of all privacy all the time, And I think that kind of change of approach will actually lead us to be able to like move towards solutions, even if it's maybe slightly more patchwork or piecemeal. Yeah.
It's actually a scope question, which I was wondering, is Web3 as an industry, let's say as a vertical, the non-KYC savior for messaging, payments, storage, identity, and should it take up that role?
I mean, that's up to you to decide, right? But it's kind of even within that question, right? There's a difference between okay, I as a user, can I interact with this thing without doing my own personal KYC and telling people about it? Or there's obviously like these kind of ZK solutions and whatever. But then the other side is, as the infrastructure provider, do you then have to, right? Like those two things are actually also separate and should be thought of and dealt with separately because the interaction patterns and like what they actually need are also different. As a user, I can like tunnel an RPC request through like, NIM, then Tor, then a VPN that I run on a boat on a satellite somewhere because it's a very small piece of information, right? Whereas you can't meaningfully do the same if you're talking about like, I don't know, validators that are running like a super fast consensus mechanism. You know what I mean? Like that, and obviously they're poles apart, but I think that kind of illustrates the difference in approach that we have to take for each thing that we're talking about.
It's true that there are a lot of people who don't care about this stuff, and you can rant to them about the Cypherpunk manifesto and they won't immediately resonate with it. But it's not like there will always be this conflict between mavericks and social contractarians. We don't read things like the Cypherpunk manifesto and Crypto Anarchist manifesto as sci-fi for entertainment. We read them because it's real and it actually does matter, and people not caring about it is makes it harder to do this. But we do this not just for our own nerdy self-satisfaction, we do it because the current way that things are going is completely unsustainable. The amount that we're sharing increasingly, especially considering now all your AI searches go to these custodians who can then learn everything about your entire life from everything that you're asking, is going to lead to a catastrophe. And the amount of financial data that is leaked when you transact with legacy fintech is similarly completely unsustainable, and we're on track to some kind of disaster. So like this isn't just like self-indulgent nerd stuff. This is seriously important, and we do it whether people care about it or not. Yep.
Just to add like one extra tiny point on that as well. I think, you know, we've been seeing lots of legislation in various European countries recently, and Australia and stuff, about like, you know, age verification for social media as an example, right? And what happens when you do that? All the Google searches for VPNs and VPN usage goes crazy, right? And it's like the tools were already there and they were already built, and then suddenly there are a load of people who were, you know, kind of stalwart social contractarians, difficult word to say. It's always a good challenge. And then suddenly they were like, oh, well, actually, you know, on the kind of the gradient between total autonomous and total social contractarian, they shifted a bit that way, and they shifted a bit that way, and then started looking for this tech. And it was like, people are looking for VPNs. The VPN was already there, so they started using it, right? It's kind of it's this kind of privacy as a future-proofing thing is also like building this stuff is also, you have to build it before it's necessary, and then people can start, when people suddenly realize, oh, actually, maybe I do need to take this, I do need to use this, even if it's to do something to like get around age verification on social media. It's a kind of a glib example, but like, it was already there and then people started using it. So I think we also have to kind of take that perspective of, at some point when stuff does keep getting like worse and worse and worse, people will want different options. And we can't build it after the fact. It just kind of already has to sit there to an extent.
Yep. Yep.
I want to build on a couple of things that have been said, and also advertise a little bit the workshop that we have at 4, where basically we're discussing how to, or which battle actually in the future are we supposed to fight. So I've been involved in this book that Pier Giorgio has presented, and I wrote a chapter on that, on the politics of privacy. And Marina said a number of very interesting things indeed, what is happening now in Europe. Now, from my experience, and that includes a lot the public sector, it's a fake discussion in a way to look at geopolitics and say that, oh, there's a problem with America, there's a problem with China, there's a problem with Russia, let's make this European and stick the European flag on it. If the same mentality applies, and to a large extent it does, it doesn't help anything. And what I observe is basically that we have 3 different vast communities that hardly connect with each other. We discussed that here before. One is us, sitting here and knowing this stuff and building this stuff. The second one is a large part of the population, and I'm always amazed how big they actually are, that are basically thrown out of the system through a succession of crises in society that we've seen over the last at least 10 or 20 years also in Europe. People that have lost their job during COVID because they didn't want to get vaccinated, people that get debanked and deplatformed also in Germany, also in Austria to a massive extent now because their views are not accepted, even family and friends of those people, and we have the concrete cases getting debanked because they have some connection with these people, and they're all very desperate, but they're not connected with each other. And then you have a third group, which I engage a lot with, which is basically industry, and that is fascinating because one might see that industry is somewhere in the legacy system and is in a way the enemy, which is it not. It was very interesting to see with the metaverse 2-3 years ago, when a lot of people also in Europe were proposing these extended reality glasses, and it has never been taken up in industrial metaverse. And why has it never been taken up? Because basically you get your business secrets out for free on YouTube or whatever at the moment that you start filming things. So it's a lot about privacy and the right notion of privacy. And my question to you is, because I also struggle a lot with that, If we take the three groups together, I think we're not only the majority, we're not only the power through what is also from industrial and financial interests that doesn't want to be transparent, to be traced by competitors and everyone, but also those that are able to build, but with all due respect, sometimes lack the social understanding of actually where's the demand side out of there. How can you get these three groups together? How can you really create a power base? Because and then I stop, and that's also what we try to discuss in the book. This is not about a flag. This is not about actually attitude as such. This is a power struggle of people that have power and that want to defend power against those that have no power. And that's the same with religion or politics, etc. So I think we need to define the problem better. And we have actually to see what communication or what platform can we use or build in order to use the massive distributed power that is in our societies.
Thank you, Joachim.
Yeah, very simple question. I will just tackle one part, which is we talked about crypto a lot and Ethereum and other blockchains. So I think the funding part is something that is pretty important. We exist and we are here, at least some of us, because there were public token offerings years ago, and they were not led by VCs and they were not led by specific groups, but they were really like the biggest crowdfunding we have seen in the history. And because of that, because of like the abundance that it has created, of course, like the outcomes are different and they're different blockchains, so they're focusing on different things. But part of that is also why we are here. If you look at the sponsors, for example, and that might have changed over the years. And I think like this efforts now with like again, like developing big companies, specific new technologies, etc. They need even more funding. They need more coordination. Coordination costs. It's not just us sitting in our rooms, like again, writing smart contracts or any other parts of the tech. But when it comes to the social coordination, there needs to be so many people that need to work on these things. And we know how hard it is, even when you do only advocacy. If you want to go even further and wider, like everyone organizing this event here has put months of effort into bringing us here, like having this opportunity, creating the space for dialogue, and there has been so much money and time put into that. So I think that is also quite important.
I can add a little bit on how we expand the funding part. The fact that the matter is that I think most projects in crypto have been mostly circularly founded between crypto projects for a long time. It's been quite of a bubble. And to grow the power base, I think we need to look beyond that. I think just a few weeks ago, like Web3 privacy and funding the commons and the Tor project all banded together for fundraising for Tor adjacent projects. And to me, this is like the beginning of this. And I would add that like the more of these that we see, the more I think that we know we are on the right track to expand the bubble, because it's a sign that the bubble is growing beyond crypto itself as an insular bubble. So that at least expands the power base to the non-crypto adjacent, but still very cypherpunk ethos-based type of the power base. The way that we expand further beyond that bubble, you mentioned the institutional side, for example, is we try to make proposals that cover the interests of all of them at once. One of the things I don't see, for example, yet on privacy is ways to have private on-chain payments that preserve the aspect of plausible deniability. If we have plausible deniability, meaning you cannot distinguish between a private transfer and a non-private transfer, then suddenly the question of regulation, for example, becomes almost a moot, because as long as you have that mechanism, then there's not really a question about how you regulate it or not. It is a mechanism that exists, you can use it, and no one can tell if it's a private transfer or not. This way you both get the cypherpunk ethos and you get the regulation question basically goes away. I would like to try to see if we can align those principles in a way that makes sense. There's another way that personally I'm not a fan of, but that also has a lot of legs behind it, which is like the prove via ZK proof that you're not part of a bad actor set. That's another way to like align incentives in such a way that you can show to regulator that you can comply with their requirements in a way that still aligns with your interests to some extent.
Yeah, I'm very much in agreement with what you said, but it seems like it's at odds with what you said before about you can't just do everything private because mixnets are inherently going to add hops, and so you're going to pay you're going to make a deliberate choice about what you want private, sort of in the case of mixnets. And that seems to be at odds because to have privacy, you need to have many people using it. It needs to be the default. I'm curious, like, how do you think about that? Or Connor, because I mean, you know, you're working on shielded pools and, you know, you do have this question, right? Zcash by default is not shielded, and you sort of have to make that deliberate choice. I'm not sure where the tooling is today in terms of being compliant. Can you actually produce sort of cryptographic reports using your own keys about not interacting with, say, banned addresses or sanctioned addresses?
I'd like to also expand this question before answering Connor. I'm a fan of the EIP 7503, the ZK wormhole EIP, because it has this notion of plausible deniability, at least on the deposit end. It doesn't have it on the withdrawal end, but I think it could be added in such a way, for example, when new ETH gets minted from staking rewards, for example, you could have the creation of that look indistinguishable from a ZK proof that you're either taking from the EIP 7503 pool or you're taking from the staking contract. I'm curious if Zcash is planning to move in that direction as well, because I think it's way better positioned as a project in terms of ethos to get to a place like this, whereas that EIP has, as far as I know, mostly stagnated on the ETH side.
Zcash is not private by default is not entirely accurate. It's there is no default. It's a switch. You can use it either way. It's possible to use Zcash without ever having a transparent address. It's possible to mine coins directly into the shielded pool. Occasionally, coins do get mined directly into the shielded pool. The Zodal wallet, the most popular wallet that exists, is transparent, or it's private by default. The Zcash community is divided on whether or not to even keep the transparent pool. A lot of very influential voices want to sunset it someday. So like, yeah, a 7503 style deniable way to shield is possible. That would be really cool. But I think it would be, personally, I think it would be cooler to just sunset the transparent pool altogether. I guess if the transparent pool is being sunset, it still would be nice to have that deniable way to shield from the transparent pool. And then two other interesting things that were brought up were, like, is compliance possible? Yes. So it's actually, I don't know of any way to do private cryptocurrency where it is not possible. So even Monero, you can create off-chain ZK proofs of the provenance of coins and then disclose them to whoever you want. Same with Zcash shielded. It's possible to do that. No one has built it as far as I know. I think it would be cool to do that, like if we were going to sunset the transparent pool, to have that as an alternative. It would be interesting to think about if there's a way to do privacy where that's not possible. Like, what if you had some kind of shielded payment protocol where it's like not possible to make provenance proofs? I've thought about it a little bit and I haven't come up with anything, but that'd be crazy.
We have a question from the audience.
Hi, I have a question connecting what you were saying, Connor, about impeding catastrophe, and you were also mentioning that, or a couple of you were mentioning that we can't build everything, and everything cannot be done at the same time. And my question is, how would you prioritize then, taking into account that the goal really is to normalize privacy? And are there any lessons we can learn from the trajectory that, for example, encryption went through, and the encryption wars, and also the evolution of kind of normalization of Tor in a way? So from this prohibition contestation to really normalization phase, and to achieve that, what do you think we should focus on building, or which layer of the stack, or which tooling? And one more kind of context to that, especially with the encryption wars history, where that sort of moved from the individual choice to use encryption to this being part of the infrastructure and therefore no longer an choice of an individual. Can we achieve that with privacy, and what to focus on to achieve that and to basically prevent that catastrophe that you were mentioning that is impeding, but also normalize privacy? Because we talk a lot about these individual tools, individual decisions, but how we move that choice to basically this becoming an infrastructure. What needs to be done?
In my opinion, the best way to push towards normalization is to just decrease the cost of using private systems. So imagine if everyone had a switch on their phone that was just the make everything private switch, and switching it doesn't change anything. You just get privacy for free. Everything is still fast. Everything still costs the same. Nothing is different. It's everything you know and love. It's just now it's privacy. Everyone would turn the switch on. The reason why not everyone does that now is because things are slow, things are a little bit more expensive, and the way we fix that is by continuing to develop the technology. If we improve the scalability of shielded payment protocols, then we can make it just as quick and snappy and cheap as everything else people are familiar with using. If people continue to research and develop mixed nets and onion routing and stuff like that, and come up with breakthroughs in that kind of tech, they can decrease the cost of using those more. And same goes with everything else.
I'd like to add another dimension of cost, which is implementation complexity. I don't think that wallets, which I look at a lot, the reason that they don't implement private payments by default isn't one of really because they want all the users to have transparent payments. It's just because it's way harder to implement. There's initiatives like Kohaku to make this easier. For Zcash, that's not really as much of a concern because privacy is the point, so wallets do make the effort. But for ecosystems like Ethereum, where that's not currently the default, and we need to make that easy. And the other thing I would like to see is basically, once you do have the switch, why do we need the switch? Why can't we just remove the transparent part, which goes, is the same direction as removing the transparent pool from Zcash? That's total normalization. And if I had my way, that would have been the way that was built from the beginning. We're not in that world, but we can do what we can. I'm part of WalletBeat, and one of the things that we push wallets to do is to have private payments by default. We actually don't give you points in quote unquote if your wallet doesn't have them by default. It's not enough to just make them available. They have to be the default option because the public option is unsafe, right? Like you get wrench attack risk, you get the fact that you're not contributing to the Anon set, you get the fact that you don't create the normalization that we want to see in the world.
Yeah, we just heard already about TikTok. Users don't care about sharing their data. So I think the only way to go about this is killing the switch and making things so that users don't have to continue caring, but the infra needs to go private by default.
So I just want to push back a little bit on this idea that we're going to make everything private by default. This is a conference. This is a public space. I think we still want to keep public spaces. The way that we're thinking about this when building Radical, because Radical, it really is it is a tool for sovereign code collaboration. We have private repositories and we have public repositories. And there's clearly a case to be made for public source code. Open source is built on this idea that, everything is public. That's sort of how we make that delineation. So it's on a repository level, and you can decide if your repository is private, then you pick the keys that you want to collaborate with, and no one else can view that.
So I think there's a couple of ways to view it, right? On the one hand, it's kind of how to normalize it is also having a plurality of people using it for various reasons, right? And I think that's what you can see with Tor, right? Lots of people use Tor around the world just because they're, I don't know, maybe they're in a centered region, but they actually just want to get on Facebook to talk to their relatives who are somewhere else across the world or whatever, right? But I think all of the stuff that we've kind of been talking about, broadly you could think of that in the kind of let's say privacy is in the defensive form, right? Stuff is being leaked. There's kind of this negative cast of it. And I think maybe, possibly, one of the kind of, I don't know, big unlocks, so to speak, right, that leads to this normalization is if you think about if you think about like a TLS, right? You have this cryptographic security in your web browser that you are talking to the website that you think you're talking to. On the one hand, the defensive posture of that was, okay, cool, people can't get scammed. But the new thing that then unlocked was, oh my God, you can do like cheap e-commerce. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, you can do a thing where I can safely like transact money online and put my credit card in, and like I know that it's actually the person that I'm sending that money to, right? Obviously there's different scams and stuff, but at least that little unlock there, also like enabled a bunch of stuff. And so the question is also like, it's a framing thing, but it's also what's the privacy unlock that's not actually just a constantly defensive posture, And that's like that's a massive question, right? But I think there's like two modalities of thinking about it.
That's actually a really good example, because TLS was really pushed forward by like online commerce giants who wanted to be able to credit card companies and so on. And that's been a huge boon for everyone. If you look at initiatives like Let's Encrypt, they basically reduced the cost of, say, TLS certificates to zero. I think we need to move, if we take that as the example, I think we need to move even beyond what Let's Encrypt did and move into a world where we have just sort of sovereign keys that we don't really, because the way that Let's Encrypt works is they're a recognized certificate authority, and they're recognized because your operating system trusts their sort of root certificate. And so basically we have the internet overlords who are trying to do a good job. I'm not like trying to diss their work, but they're sort of acting as these mediators of who is worthy and who's not worthy of a certificate. And I think we need to move more into a model where anyone can issue a certificate and that's accepted by the browser by default. I realize that that's sort of there's like many challenges, and you can probably go on about that, but I think that's definitely it's partially a technological problem.
Do you think we need like standardization?
Yes, I will not say not to that. I think it's always a matter of some standardization.
So I just wanted to circle back to this idea of making privacy the default option, and I wonder whether we are going to run into issues of whether this might infringe upon the ideas of privacy being a right rather than something that should be enforced on everyone as a blanket whole. So whether this would mean that people should or users should have the choice to be able to opt out of the privacy and to be able to say, I'd like to be able to make my sphere public, because this doesn't seem very democratic to me at all.
What like a quick answer to that is like, I suppose, yeah, it's by default, but it's selective disclosure, right? It's like privacy by default, and then you choose what you want to share. So it's it's not like enforcing the blanket on it, because also it just wouldn't work. But yeah, it's more like you start from the base assumption that it's your choice. Yeah.
Sharing is great. People should share. It's like the Find My Friends thing is really fun. I use it, but I'm really glad that it's not just showing my location to the entire world by default. That would be crazy.
Actually, just having a chat is selective disclosure, right? Like you just choose what to share with different people around you, and it's if anything, it's actually like you can talk about it in like very, very abstract terms, but I think actually selective disclosure itself as a principle is actually a superhuman and like it's the fundamental rubric of like social life, right? And I think we can, which is maybe kind of a messaging aspect of it, that maybe we've focused too much on the abstraction, as opposed to, well, actually this is just like the norm, the social.
Yeah, that's the design. I'm thinking about maybe rules in terms of GDPR and stuff like that, which we think that, they brought privacy. You cannot really opt out of that. And that's also an interesting concept of like really thinking about, can you opt out of something, and what is it? Like it's a tech design, or it's like a rule, or it's just like a software law that you can define these groups and then they can choose from their own in way interests. The question is like you said, human right. Can you opt out of human rights, or do you have it by default as a human?
And the room fell silent. Yes.
Okay, I was like restraining myself for a really long time, but I want to be like a bad guy here. So privacy costs money more than without privacy. And my question is, who will pay for it? Because if we are talking about privacy by default, we need much more money to pay for default privacy option. I'm not talking about like clever tricks how to incorporate privacy like for free, like really like Signal, Proton. Let's talk about this organization, which are not crypto native. Look at their balance sheets. They're really like donations mostly. In crypto, we are in a better situation because a lot of organizations are funded by old ICOs, basically like free money, which we were really, really lucky to get somewhere in the past. But now I don't think we will have such big volatility to do another like ICO again. So we are more in like conscript money situation. So who are gonna pay for it? This is an open question. If somebody have an answer.
There actually is a talk later on about business models and privacy. As a suggestion for the audience. Yeah.
Like I think like if like let's say we would have like privacy by default, and like with the TLS example, like we had like companies willing to invest a lot of money to the research, and like I think if we have the option of like me selling my own data or like disclosing, like making my data public, then there's like new ways how like other people can make money, and I think that way we can bring new money to the as an investment to the ecosystem. Like maybe like I think that's a I can see this is like totally happening, but like I agree with you completely. Like privacy is super expensive now because like we haven't really done that much work on that compared to other parts of the like crypto.
I hope so. I mean, like the quick example is cloud subscription, like $100. Everybody is paying for it because without it, you're literally fucked. For privacy, oh, let's do some free Proton subscriptions for several emails and I will be good. So this is a question about how important is it for people right now to use this service. And with privacy, you will need to like advocate for it, but it's not like really a necessity. In a sense, if you're not an activist or repressed community, minority individual, it's hard to sell privacy as a necessity. So compared to AI, it's really highlighted right now.
What do you think is expensive about it? This is the part that I don't get. Like, I mean, we all now, our phones can do encryption. Yeah. I mean, like, my question is, like, why do you think that privacy is expensive? I think it's actually it's you know, it really benefits from like zero marginal cost economics.
Yes, phones could do encryption, but to develop this encryption, you needed money for do it in the past, and privacy will have like more challenges in the future. So it's like an ongoing battle of throwing money to one side versus like authoritarian regimes and other sides.
Yeah. I wasn't gonna talk about Zcash. I was gonna say like, yeah, I mean we saw like a lot of private cryptocurrency infrastructure companies raise like in the billions. If you look into all of, like the 2021 peak bull market hysteria, it actually adds up to like billions for all various ZK companies and adjacent infrastructures. But they're all spending like on crazy stuff that isn't really necessary, so it makes it look more expensive than it really is. If there wasn't the like billions spent on like massively inflated valuation crypto privacy infra startups, it wouldn't seem like as expensive of a field, I don't think. But no, you are right. Like someone has to pay cryptographer researchers to figure out new ciphers and pay auditors and cryptanalysts and stuff. But it just doesn't add up to so much that it's like a devastating leaky hole that is in need of immediate plugging, in my opinion.
You mentioned activists and such that have a need for privacy, and I think that we're not even getting money from them, even though they would be more than willing to give it if we were actually trying to help them. I recall last year there was a report called something like Financial confidentiality in the age of digital surveillance by the Fight for the Future organization, in which there was a line that struck me that said something like, for friends and strangers in DeFi, we have fought for you. When will you build for us? This is because they have been supporting anti-censorship internet regulation and crypto regulation for a while. And the crypto community, in the meantime, is doing meme coins and gambling, and they're not really building privacy. That has changed since, but to me, this is like a reflection of even the pools of money that are ethos aligned and that would be willing to give us money, like we're not even meeting them. So I think we should start there.
We have a question. Yep.
Hi, I like the point about TLS. Like for me, it feels like it's when the interests are aligned between the a people and the company, or like whoever have the money, and in this case, it's more chances that it can go further, and at the same time, like we are like humans going like less resistance in many ways, and people like when they don't care about privacy, maybe they just don't get this like boiling point. For example, at one point it's gonna be some huge leak of ChatGPT chats, and then it will be this point for some people. This is one thing, and the other thing is that when the some companies, when they don't earn money out of your data, they actually, it's not their interest to have this data plain text on their servers. It's actually, they want to have opposite. But developing the ACLs to make it private, it's very, very complicated thing to do. So in some ways, I think like in the future, we have like, maybe Meta will be not in a good shape in a way that it will be more alternatives for people to choose. Also with AI, again, I think it's gonna democratize the way how we can build this, like some local social networks, some other things. So how do you think, like, where this alignment of interests can happen?
So I think it also actually it actually goes further as well, right? Because it's not just like your data. I mean, yes, there are lots of companies that sell your personal data, and that is a way that they make money. But it also costs a lot of money to like hold all of this data, right? Because you have to pay the people who are managing your systems, or you have to pay an external company who are like managing the personal data in a secure way. You maybe have like insurance in case you get hacked. And yeah, I think that at the moment, one kind of possible future is there's lots of like, let's say maybe like buckets of personal data that may be held with like slightly flabby security measures. And, I mean, there's been so many hacks across so many pieces of infrastructure in the last 6 months alone, and I only think it's going to get like more insane, that actually the kind of the business case almost for those companies is like, okay, cool. So you don't hold passwords, even hashed, right? So there's nothing that can leak, because maybe instead for login, there's some kind of a, there's a verifiable but anonymous credentialing scheme that's being used, and you can kind of expand that into like loads of different areas. So I think that could be actually the business case of actually you could be super lean, because it just becomes an anonymous access control layer. Is this entity that's trying to interact with me now, have they kind of paid for this service in some way? Yes, great. Don't need to have any personal data, and then that's not this like toxic waste that's being held. Which is maybe would be difficult to sell to existing companies that do make money out of selling your personal data, but maybe it could also enable like kind of different ways of doing stuff, that, when the inevitable kind of ChatGPT log dump happens and everyone panics, then these entities will be around to kind of, siphon off the people that do have this movement away from social contractarianism.
Okay, we have one final question from the audience.
Thanks. I got interested by talk about TLS and Let's Encrypt. I'm personally not sure if I'm okay with the statement that we sacrifice somehow self-hosting ability or some decentralization in favor of encryption by default. Are you okay with centralized solutions like Let's Encrypt being in place just because they provide something for free that's like by default, even though they centralized things actually? Thanks.
So actually, my point was that we need to move to a different model beyond what Let's Encrypt is doing. But I think that's the intermediate step that we need. Broadly speaking, I would love to live in a world where we have the tooling to do this without sort of going through some authority. But I also want to say that I think we tend to fetishize the dissolution of institutions. I think we need to better think of it in terms of functional and dysfunctional institutions and whose interests are they protecting. If you look at, say, the Tor project, I would say that it's been pretty well governed, and as an institute, or even like the Signal Foundation or the organization behind Signal, the secure messaging app, I would say that's a functional institution that is providing a great public good. And yes, they're somewhat centralized. I don't know if we can fully eliminate institutions. Again, that's something, the jury's still out on this. We're building all of these technologies. I would like things to be self-certifying and permissionless. But I don't know if we can make everything that.
We have a following panel coming up, but as a last note, as we are all here, and a lot of builders are here as well, and people who are working on privacy in the space, I'd like to ask each of you short, what currently excites you in improvements of privacy in this industry right now? What do you see coming up?
I'll start.
Beyond your own projects, I add.
Kohaku. Wallet is not affiliated with Kohaku. However, it is very much ethos aligned. It is about decreasing the cost of adding privacy to wallets. And it is things like private token transfers, but it's also network level privacy for wallets. It's also about popularizing the notion of abstracting what an Ethereum account is beyond addresses and to be more about like a set of addresses, how to manage them, how to isolate apps between them, how to make sure you're not tracked across DeFi applications, all these sort of things that does make me excited. This was not in the conversation at all even 2-3 years ago, and so I'm excited to have this actually take shape.
For me, it's like local, building local. I'm really excited about building local, and I think that's like maybe we don't need that much like a privacy for many things if we can be able to do that locally. If we can run the AI model locally, we don't share that data with the company. So really excited about that.
Yeah, I would mention Kohaku as well, but also maybe some other solutions that are being built, I think more and more on different layers and different applications for different use cases, mostly in Ethereum. That's what I know about Mo.
I would say I think the Zcash team is doing great work. That's not, I'm not shilling here.
Yeah. Second, all of the Zcash developments that are going on, and then also the ability now to do anonymous client-side like kind of recovery of keys using SDKs like the Unforgettable SDK. That kind of stuff I think is going to remove one of the really big, weird, alien pain points to a lot of people, which was kind of like endemic of the holding of your own keys of what is this magical 24 words that I have to keep so sacrosanct, otherwise I lose everything, Yeah.
Yeah, definitely Zcash, but also decentralized social, which is controversial because on FCC I did a talk called decentralized social and embracing too much, holding too little, which is basically was like a rant on decentralized social from my side, but centralized social have become so bad that we will need to pull it through now or never.
Love NIM, love Ethereum, love the push for crops culturally in ETH. And then there's a technology that is really interesting called private information retrieval, which has been made. There have been like papers with recent breakthroughs, and then very practical, scalable implementations that are being built. DC nets are also having a little bit of a moment. Flashbots has been researching DC nets and figuring out how to use anonymous broadcasts in interesting ways related to the MEV supply chain. So I find that pretty exciting as well.
Awesome. Thank you all for joining today. I'd like to give you a big applause for our speakers today.